Hey guys, if you've been following the podcast, you know we have a special live event coming up November 17th in Los Angeles. We know we're sorry it's in Los Angeles. I'm also going to pre-apologize and say we're sorry that it's so limited. There's only a couple hundred tickets available for this thing. If you are interested in hanging out with the staff or the reactors, click the link in the description. If tickets happen to be sold out by the time you click there, join the wait list. We might be able to open up more tickets down the line, or you'll be the first to find out about future live events like this because we have no idea if people are interested in all.
Yeah, it's FBE Meet and Greet 2017, so hopefully there'll be a 2018 perhaps.
So please click the link, get your tickets, or sign up and join the wait list. What's going to be happening at this live event, this live meet and greet? Morgan?
There's going to be a possible chance to audition.
You can take pictures with staff or reactors.
And did we mention that it's free?
So it's
free food.
It's free. It is free food. I mean, come for the meal, I guess, even if you don't want to hang out with the staff or the reactors. But yes, please click the link in the description or join the wait list. We would desperately love to see the 5% there. Or just find out how many of you guys are interested in something like this, because we don't know. Yeah. Like at VidCon, it was super fun to meet you, but we'll see who wants to come out and actually hang out with us in person in LA, November 17th. I'm really personally excited. How about?
And now the podcast without John.
I'm not in the podcast. Oh my God.
And welcome to another episode of the FBE Podcast. You've got both Fine Brothers today, pretty rare.
Hello.
So I'm here, I'm Benny, along with Rafi.
That's me. I'm Rafi.
That is your name, not Rafi.
No, don't
Rafi.
even, no.
Just saying.
It's Rafi.
Just saying. So this is the FBE Podcast. We have two wonderful guests who we'll get to in a moment. But if you're unfamiliar, this is the weekly time where we get very geeky about all things FBE, talk about all the different productions and various happenings and announcements going on around the company. It is a very glorious hour to an hour and 15 minutes for people who like that stuff, and maybe borderline dentist torture if people don't like that kind of stuff and just want to watch the shows. Either way, it's fine. But if you stumbled here by accident, this is going to be over an hour of just talking about FBE. So
if you don't really love what we do,
if you're not part of the,
probably just want to leave, and we're okay with it.
We are okay with that. We always like to explain this for people who are our guests. We call the people who do listen to the podcast the 5%. Being the 5% who actually care about this podcast. And we love you guys. But we are joined by two members of Adults React. So first we've got, if you're not watching, he's in a beanie, but not Rafi though. The other person in a beanie. Who are you and where are you from?
Hello, my name is Brandon. I am from planet Earth.
And how long have you been on React?
Wow, actually, just a little over a year.
All right.
I think my React birthday was in like August or something. So it's pretty sweet. I hit the 1 year mark. I'm pretty happy
But
about
we'll
that.
talk about it probably. You've been around a little bit.
We'll get into this.
But don't talk about it. You've been around.
Our amazing guest has been on the show for quite longer than that.
Yeah.
Who's here?
Me, Morgan. I've been here for, I believe, 4 years. I think I started when I was 17 years old. And I am from Burbank.
All right. Good times.
But not to laugh. I just in the sense of like, well, I don't know, in the sense of thinking about Vince and thinking about, because I think that's how
part
you
of it.
We're
going to get into that. We're going to
get
into that too. But just the idea of Burbank generally, other than us being in Burbank.
No, it's laughable. I mean, it's a laughable town.
I will say though, because all the memories are like, oh no, I know that you were 17. These are the things that I always remember. But now that there are adults on the cast, I don't know necessarily how old they are, but because we put the ages for the kids and the teens, I'm always aware of when someone started because my brain's like that. I'm like, no, Morgan was 17. She started.
I remember that
just
graphic.
Turned 17.
Yeah.
That I did not know.
I think.
You were freshly 17 at the time.
I think it was a summer. It was either hot outside or really, really hot in the office. Either, both, I don't know.
It's always really hot in the office. Let's be real about that. It gets really, really hot in stage one. But anyway, this is the FBE Podcast. We have two wonderful guests. We're going to get into questions that you guys had for them, as well as some interpersonal stuff from Rafi and myself from these guys. But first, we start with the company news and updates and things like that, as always. So we talked about this a little bit last week. It's been seeded out around social media. More is coming. And you've heard a little bit about it at the plug at the beginning of the podcast. Yeah. But the very first ever FBE meet and greet is going to be happening. Raf, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this will be something. I mean, it's probably going to be repeating, but wherever
they're going to hear this. The 5% hears the same thing over and over again, especially because they're also the ones that are watching all the social media and everything that we make and the vlogs. So they hear everything 12 times, but they love it.
But no, we're really excited because, this is something that we've not really figured out how we want to approach and go about. And we thought about having some maybe larger event, but we really want to have an understanding of what people are wanting and looking for in something like a meet and greet with the company. So it is only going to be like a few hundred people that are going to be able to come to this thing.
We're so sorry it can't be everybody.
Yeah, but I think that that's the thing. If this really goes well and we see the response from not just the 5%, but maybe even the larger audience as well, that we'd be able to do something larger. And but the basic idea is that as many reactors as possible are coming. It's open
I hope
to
that you'll
all.
both be there.
Are both of you coming? Do you know?
I hope I'll be able to make
Okay.
it. Really, it depends on work, adult life.
I will absolutely be making it because I work that day here anyway. So I might as well head down to YouTube Space.
Nice. So yeah, all the reactors, all the staff, gonna be in there. So there's gonna be a good. God, I don't know how many of us. It'll be almost half the amount of then the fans. It'll be possibly 120 to 150 of FBE
Which is so
reactors
insane.
and staff, and then 300 of the fans. And we'll just be hanging out and taking pictures together. And literally, because it'll be such an intimate kind of setting, we'll be able to just kind of talk, hang out. There will be an opportunity for auditions for some people. We won't be able to
It's not gonna be
audition
long
everybody.
enough, yeah.
For some people that want to sign up for that, but it'll just be a cool thing to get to see what that type of event looks like in its infancy. And then we'll see what it becomes when it might be much larger come next year, when we might do something that's a bigger event and a bigger like whole day.
Which
or
might have
something,
to have like admission price and stuff like that depending, but we're going to see the demand. And so if you can be there, we hope we get to meet some of the 5%. Identify yourself as being part of the 5% because we'll all get very excited about that. And if you can't, you'll be able to experience it through all this content that we're making.
Yeah.
So before we get into some of the questions and things like that, one of the 5% made a point that made me realize, I said that weirdly, but made me realize that I've posted a couple of times recently and I forgot to say the thing that I always say. So because I need to make up for it, Macarena, Macarena, Macarena. Anyway, moving on. So you guys use the hashtag FBE Podcast to send in questions for these amazing guests across social media. But before that, we like to go into some of the questions that we have for them. So I'm going to start with a little bit of history and start with Brandon a bit. So, Brandon, you just talked about how you've been on the show for about a year.
Yes.
But that
Yes.
is not your actual first appearance in an FBE video by a long shot.
No, not at all,
So
actually.
tell us how that all came to be and what else you were doing prior to being on the
Where
show.
else can we find you? Easter eggs.
Wow, that gave me butterflies. I never thought I'd talk about this on the podcast. Well, actually, my first appearance on FBE was in a Last Moments of Relationship video. So I remember, watching the show so long ago. And then I remember you guys posted on Instagram, hey, we're looking for like background actors because, we just need some of the fans to be part of the videos. And luckily I had just turned, I think maybe like 18 at the time, which was
18
what,
and up,
yeah,
yeah.
because you guys were asking for people 18 and up.
You were a part of the 5%.
I
back
was,
then.
yeah. And so I remember you guys, I had just turned 18. I was like, sweet, let's do this. And so I'm assuming that not a lot of the 5% were 18 because when I emailed, I almost instantly got an email back saying, yeah, come through. Like, let's shoot this thing out in like Santa Clarita. I don't remember. It was far.
Which Last Moment of Relationship sketch was it?
The one I remember, the first one, because there were multiple. The first one was the zombie one. I remember showing up. That was the first time I met Julie. Shouts out to Julie. It's my dog. And it was a blast because I got to meet. Unfortunately, I didn't know that you guys weren't gonna be there, so I was like, oh man, they're not here. Oh well. But it was still
Yeah, we're not on every shoot.
Yeah. And so I showed up and I was like, wow, this is still so cool. This is like production that's going to go up on YouTube, and it was great. And like you can very minimally see me. Like I'm almost you can't really tell it's
It's
me.
called Love is Dead on YouTube if you're
Love
looking
is
for
Dead.
it.
I remember that. Yeah.
Last Moments of Relationship number 24, but you were also in multiple other ones, and I met you on one of those sets very
Yes.
briefly. Was it
Yes.
the dance one or was it a
It
different
was
one?
a dance one. Yes, this was at YouTube Space. So luckily I had become such good friends with Julie that at one point she just stopped emailing me and just started texting me. She's like, hey, we're having a shoot. like next
Come be
week.
an
You
extra.
want to come? I was like, yeah, dude, I got time. And so I just like show up, and I quickly became super loyal to Julie and was almost in every single one. So it really broke my heart when Last Moments was like discontinued. And
It is one of these things, we've talked about it before, that scripted content for the most part has had to go away because it's just not sustainable on YouTube anymore. And there was a lot of Last Moments. That one is called Last Dance if you want to look for Brandon
Last
inside of
Dance
that
was
one.
awesome.
But this was a great series. If you are newer to the channel, that was a scripted series that we made all the way from 2009 all the way until most recently. The most recent one was the VR sketch that Brandon Rogers did. Technically, it was the Last Moments of Relationships. But the idea is it's 30 seconds to 5 minutes. The last 30 seconds or 5 minutes of various relationships. Once you get into the mid-20s, almost 30, they get crazy and you talk about zombies and an entire sketch with no talking and interpretive dance being everything that's going on. But hopefully one day it will come back. It was good times. It was good times.
But
But we did meet briefly.
We met
Though
briefly.
I reintroduced myself when I met you here.
Yeah. So at YouTube Space, I remember you happened to pop your head in to check out the shoot, and I think I stopped you and I was like, "Oh man, it's f***ing Benny." I'm sorry. Can I cuss?
Well, I can't say that, and now Sean's gonna have to bleep that.
Dang it, Sean. It's fine. Sean bleeps all my stuff. So I said, "Oh my God, it's Benny." And so I was just kind of like, "Hey, I'm gonna ask him a few questions." And then you were super busy even then. I mean, you still are now. So yeah, it was just kind of like quick questions that I've always been curious about. And then you pieced out so fast because you had things to do. But it was a fun shoot. It was so cool. I think we shot like 2 or 3 sketches that day at YouTube Space. So
Good times.
yeah,
Good times.
good times.
We will get back to your role in the engagement team in a second, but Morgan, is my memory correct that you are one of the very, very few that was handed a flyer?
Yes.
Oh,
I was
really?
handed a flyer in
So-
my high school drama class.
So there was
Wow.
about a 2.5 week period only.
We tried.
Only 2.5 weeks
Yeah.
that we actually had staff handing out flyers at schools around the area.
We always trying just different things to be like, how do we just get regular people to be on the shows? And then we learned that like schools are like just they have all these specificities of how you could get that.
But you're
to
allowed
happen.
to hand out flyers outside of the school.
Yeah, right.
That was allowed.
Yeah.
But either way, it's only 2 people, I believe, that ever got on the show that way because it was this tiny period of time, and you are one of the 2. Do you
So
remember
what's the
when you were
story of
handed
that?
the flyer? How did this how did this all happen?
Well, I was handed the flyer and I was like, okay, obviously nobody else in this entire room is going to even like do this or try. So I was like, I'm just going to do it and try and like, we'll see. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And I was like, I'm going to do it and hopefully it works out. And I got to the office and it was when you guys were still in North Hollywood. It was that office,
Yep.
like tiniest waiting room. I was literally like, wait, I can't cuss. I was very nervous. Oh, my phone's going off. I was super, super nervous. I was sweating. I was freaking out. I watched the first episode of like the one that I was in, which is the Turn Down for What episode, and we react to that.
What a good one to start with.
And I'm a
good one.
freaking ball of nervous energy. Like I'm trying to keep my jokes too appropriate, so it's like awkward. Because if you watch now, I mean, I literally just don't.
now
I
you don't care.
I'm just
Yeah.
like, this is what you're getting.
It's become
so here it is.
amazing over the years of being
Yeah,
like, oh wow,
seriously.
she is willing to just say
To watch
whatever is on
myself
her
open
mind.
up, I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't care at all. Like
Yep.
I remember doing my makeup that day and being freaked out in my makeup, and it is so orange, by the way. I was wearing that like True Match CoverGirl foundation that every 12-year-old girl gets handed to her in some like secret bathroom somewhere. Like you don't really know how you got it, but you use it. Terrible, horrible, so bad.
So you were familiar with the show when you were handed the flyer?
Yeah, I knew Kids React. I think that was how I knew really like anything about it. And then obviously Vince was the one who handed me the flyer, so I knew Vince. So I had watched it.
So
Right,
Vince, if
right.
you're not familiar, Vince has been with the company from the very beginning,
Yes.
and so at that time was in a role where he would be handing out flyers. He now is the main like creative producer on the entire React channel. So you knew Vince a little bit.
I knew Vince. I went to Japan with his brother Alex. We did a sister city trip, so we went and stayed with foster families, which I don't really know if that host family. I don't think it's called a foster family. They didn't
I
adopt
think-
us.
yeah.
It's a
Sorry,
host
we're
family.
sorry if we offended anybody with that statement.
But yeah, it was really fun and interesting to watch Vince too, like throughout the years from when he handed me that flyer to how I know him now. And it's just like everything has changed so much, but it was such a cool random opportunity that it wasn't something that I would really reach for because I'm a surprisingly shy person in like real life. I have a hard time just not being uncomfortable and awkward. So I was like, I don't know, I guess I'm gonna like do it, and either they hate it or I'll say something just funny enough that they decide to keep me around, and I guess I said
It's not
something
about being
just
funny,
funny
Morgan.
enough.
It's about being yourself.
Well, I am funny though, so.
You are. But I think that's interesting just generally. I think we've heard that from some people over time, that the environment, that the whole show or the way that it's filmed, you could be the most extroverted person or introverted person, and it still works to come in and kind of feel okay with talking because it is a small environment and you don't feel like there's a million people around. You got to be worried. Yes, there are a million people that are going to watch you.
Right.
But you don't have to think about that. You just have to worry about 2 people that are in the room with you that you have to,
Yeah, but that's
open
like
up
saying
to.
you only have to worry about Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt in the room and no one else, but like
Whoever
these two.
puts me and Rafi on a pedestal about Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. We were that
No.
us.
I was so nervous. Seriously, if you guys go back and watch that episode, like you can just tell that I want to
great.
cry or like cry. That's pretty much it. I just look like I want
I
to cry.
remember you being great.
I don't have any memories of anything being negative at all.
No, it wasn't negative. I was just like, oh God, I hope I like
but-
say funny stuff and I'm not just like the most boring person they just skip through.
And you literally
Show
don't
you one
even
time.
care anymore in the sense of we
Yeah.
were just talking about that. But Morgan, in terms of like the producers here, when me and Rafi were in the rooms all the time, it really was like, okay, no matter what,
We have Morgan.
if Morgan is opinionated about this, which we're pretty sure she's going to be, she's going to talk and we're going to go overtime no matter what, even if we try really hard, because we have times we have to hit, and there's different tricks that the
try
interviewers
to-
will all be trying to
to
do
get
to
through
move
it.
things along.
Yeah.
It's impossible to
work.
do with Morgan.
It didn't work with you.
The trick is they just turn the camera off. They're like, oh yeah, we're still going. Finish your thought. Finish your thought. They've been like wrapping up for 20 minutes. It's already in someone's office being edited.
But so frequently we would have Morgan be the last of the day because
Yeah,
that would happen.
have the extra
But
talk.
I have so many
Yeah.
memories of finishing up something and then the 3 of us would talk for like
Keep going.
at least a half hour after
yeah.
we stopped filming.
So passionately,
we were just
like angry about something.
Oh,
Yeah.
most of the time angry, but I remember talking with you guys about FIDM before I went to FIDM, and then I got in.
Yep.
So I remember that conversation. That was after.
Can you talk about that a little bit? People won't know what that is.
So FIDM is a fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, I think. I didn't go there for a fashion degree. I actually went there for a beauty degree. So I did beauty merchandising, which is kind of like product development. I learned a lot about the beauty industry, but I definitely have a clear, distinct memory of having a conversation with you guys about like where I wanted to go to school and
Yeah.
what I wanted to do, and just talking about all that and figuring it out. And yeah, it's so cool to just have one-on-one conversation even after filming, because the energy is still so high and I feel like it's very productive. I always get things done.
Yeah, well, we're always very invested in what every reactor ends up doing. So I remember that conversation very vividly because it was a moment of like, what am I thinking about doing, and us talking about, well, here's
you
options.
you weren't sure
Yeah.
at all what to
I
do
still
with the
don't
next
know.
step of your
Honestly,
life.
I'm
Yeah.
like, the next step is what the next step is, and I
Yeah.
think it's just like my path is gonna kind of reveal itself. I mean, that's the way it was with FIDM, really. Like there were a lot of options, and I just kind of came out through having conversations with a lot of different people and being offered support and ideas and help, and all of that really helped me make my decision.
Right. So with that, being invested in who you are and being very happy that people can be who they are, don't know if the whole 5% does know this. I don't want to be the one to say it. So can you talk about what you recently shared with the world?
Oh God, this is like really like every single time I have to say it, it's still so hard for me. And it's just like, it's not that it's a coming to terms thing. It's just like every single time that I come out to someone or anyone or a group of people, I get like the butterflies, and it's just like intimidating to say because I feel like I'm still worried about people's reactions. But reactions, which is funny because we're reacting. Well, we're gonna get some reactions.
Yeah.
But I just came out as gay this past coming out day of 2017, and so that was a pretty big deal. Like coming out on the internet to everyone. There were people in my life who knew, but like collectively being like, this is a true thing about me, because I feel like you can suspect certain things about people just by how they live their life, but to really like clearly be like, hey, this is it. You can't see it, but I'm dropping it.
Can't take it back, right? It's just like,
Like, and then it's there, and everyone will know it, and it's definitely scary, but super exciting, and it's been good. It's been really good. It feels good to be like all myself fully and not have to hide anything or any part of my life.
Well, I can say that once I found out and saw the post, I felt, it's such a weird thing to say. It's hard to describe because it's not uplifted, but I just, even for myself, had this moment of like, oh man, I'm so happy for Morgan. And like, it almost made me cry in the sense of just like, I care so much about you, and that this becoming now something that you don't need to be hiding
Right.
was just like
It's like a relief.
it's
for
just like a
everybody.
moment of like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm so
For
happy for
you.
Morgan, and I need to see her as soon as possible.
Yeah, it was, and I think for, certain people in my life who had told, like my mom, even, I'm sure it felt like a weight off her shoulders just because I didn't feel like I had that pressure to not tell her that anymore. There was no pressure there, and I just did it, and it was super, super nerve-wracking. Even though I knew she'd be fine with it, I was just like, oh God. And I was like, Mom, I have something to tell you. And I'm pretty sure she thought I was going to say something terrible. And then I was just, like, I'm gay. And she was like, she went out the
Maybe
next
that's
day
the way to do it.
Target.
Maybe that's the way to do it. It's just like just keep setting it up like it's just going to be the
So
worst
bad.
thing
And just be like,
ever.
and they're just like,
You're like, oh, that's
okay.
it. Nice.
Whatever.
It's a
I
good
think
technique.
what's interesting to me in terms of a topic of discussion, because I'm sure inevitably there's somebody listening to this podcast that is going through something like this. I feel like it's of course, and from all of the types of content that we've made over the years, dealing directly with this all the time, whether it's kids in gay marriage, even recently kids and In a Heartbeat, elders with the In a Heartbeat cartoon. Like we talk about this a lot. It's probably one of the, if not like the number one like issue that FBE has like very
Gonna
championed
keep hitting
out.
you with it.
Even though we always let the whatever the opinion is be there, we still talk about it a lot because it's a very important issue to everybody here. But I think that there is a misconception about things in terms of society where here you are living in California, extremely liberal area, around all kinds of people that are fully out. It isn't like a issue like it is in certain places in this country and other places of the world, but it's still just as difficult and is this moment that you have to go through, even when you know it should go fine.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit of that it's not, well, what do you mean? Why you're in LA, which is something that could
Thought
be
it would have
way-
been so easy
Yeah,
way earlier
I mean,
in life.
People
Yeah.
have that opinion. I think that there's a lot of different fears that can be associated with coming out. I think one of the fears is, for me, it was like, am I sure? Because I kind of struggled throughout the years coming up to coming out where I was just like, am I not? Like, should I be trying harder to date guys instead of dating girls? Like, am I bisexual? Am I pansexual? And just like, and then there's a whole battle where I was like, do I want to even put a label on it at all? Do I want to just not have a label? And then I kind of like realized that I personally want to identify myself as gay or lesbian because I want other people to feel comfortable and feel like it's okay for them to also have that label. Sometimes it just helps people to have something to call themselves and be like, yeah, I am gay, because then it just solidifies all of the thoughts and worries you've been having, and it makes them almost not so scary, even just to say it to yourself. Like, I remember literally coming home and coming out to my cat. That was like the first person or thing I came out to.
And what did the cat do?
He did nothing, and I was like,
Aw.
oh my God, this is great. Like, what a good reaction. He just like sat there. Yeah, exactly. I was like, this is perfect. This is how I wanted it to go. But just like slowly, pairing that label with myself and my personality really helped me and gave me the courage to embrace that part of myself. And I don't feel like that my gayness defines me in any way. Like, it's not Morgan who is gay. It's like, I am Morgan and I am also gay.
Mm-hmm. Which again, and that's where throughout the years we have a handful of cast members who are gay on the show, but it only ends up coming up when it should come up. It's not like we
in natural
identify
conversation.
No,
yeah,
right,
it's like,
right.
and that's even the thing of like people being like, "Oh, why don't you talk?" It's like, well, why would we? Everyone's just who they are. Like, so when it comes up, it comes
But
up.
those are just, it's almost like, I don't know, humanity and the way that we all are and the way that we've evolved and the way that we have conversations and the way we get to know each other. You end up in these like hypocritical moments of like, why didn't you tell me? And why haven't you said it before? And it's like, why would I have to say it to you? And
Yeah.
all those like back and forths have happened with so many people now that are coming out, where they have those moments of some people that are not just fully happy, that you end up being like, well, why did you? And then why should I have had to say it? And I think that more than anything, it has become what you're talking about, where it is more powerful, and not just for yourself, but for society and everything, to be identifying as it and be open to it, so that it's not something that it's like you're trying to hide. It's not like you aren't proud of who you are. And the more people that you interact with that understand that this is a way that is normal and should be embraced and loved, then more people will then be able to feel that way and not think that it's other.
Yeah, I mean,
as much as possible.
that's really what I hope, because I think people look at me or they know me from the show, and I come off as very extroverted, and just like you would never imagine that I would be hiding any part of myself from anyone or anything.
Yeah.
Like I'm
You'd be
pretty much
saying
an
it
open
every
book.
episode.
Right.
You'd be like, you know what? And I'm gay. So
There were definitely times, when we would have a conversation when I would just want to let it slip out, and it sucks when you're struggling and you want to tell people why you're struggling because you know that's the reason. You know, deep down inside you, it is school on the surface, it's other stuff, but like at the deepest part, it's struggling with who you are as a person and like how that will change your life. And so it's definitely hard to keep that from people who love you and you love, but like there's a certain tug of war that I feel like happens inside of a lot of people where it's just the fear of not being accepted, no matter how much you feel like you know a person. Because I lost people that I considered my friends who were just kind of made the decision to not want to hang out with me anymore. So that instills a deep fear of like, is that going to be everyone? Is that going to be my family? You know, so it's very intimidating. But then when you finally like find the strength inside yourself to be like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say it. It's such a powerful moment. And like, you get this high from it, from just like saying, like, I feel so enthusiastic and energetic right now just because it's like that moment of just saying it again. You know, it feels so good to finally be saying it because I was so in the closet for as long as I've known you guys.
Yeah. Well,
I wonder.
mean,
Yeah.
go ahead. No.
I was gonna say, I wonder how people like. Anytime this has happened in my life, I get a high. Like it's a weird thing. Like I've totally had that feeling of like.
That's what I was even saying before. It makes you
get
feel
so
like lifted. Like I get
I get
so
so
You're like,
excited.
woo! You're like,
Yes.
this
Yes.
is so
Yes.
I'm so
cool.
happy for
Yeah.
you. Like, oh my God. Like Betty,
Right,
I think you texted me.
Yeah. As soon as I found out, I ended up
Yeah.
texting Ralph. I'm like,
And I was just like, what? You know, just so happy. And I know so many people around here were so happy. But I don't know how other people go about it.
well,
That's
it all
how I
depends.
end up
I
feeling
think what's
about
interesting about it is going back that even when you're in a supportive environment, even when you're living in a city where it is a very supportive type of place to live, all the same types of issues still do exist. And even you having to admit that you've lost some people in your life, I think there's some people that stereotype on the other side of things of like, oh, if you live somewhere, everything's going to be fine, when that's not really the full story necessarily.
Not at all, yeah.
And I think at the same, beyond just being very happy and very, very proud of you, you know, you made a choice even with the realities of the people, so many people that have watched you on the show for so many years to also make that step. That had to have not been part of the decision-making process. Had to also be of like you're a public figure to whatever degree you're a public figure.
Yeah.
And what is that like to have to realize, oh wait, this is not just my family and friends. This is potentially this huge audience of people that have watched me grow up.
Right. It's intimidating. It's a little bit intimidating. It's just like
Thanks for making her realize that, Bet. No. It's like, wait a
back in the
second.
room,
Wait a
I
second.
try to make you think a little bit differently.
and I think there's a little bit of that, you know, I don't want to like let people down because being a girl on the show, there are a lot of very nice, generous admirers who, you know, like to comment on my pictures and tell me how beautiful I am and whatever and blah, blah, blah. And it's like really encouraging and it helps me through the day. And then I'm just thinking, you know, what if all of that goes away because of this? Because I'm unobtainable, you know,
Fascinating.
to them. And that's something that like kind of went through my head a few times. And then I just, you know, you put it off for so long and then I'm just like, do I have to do it? I don't know. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to post it. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to see what happens. If it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good. And like, I'm just going to get it over with because I want to be living my life super honest and like not have to be hiding any part of myself anymore. So I did it and it was super scary. I was like staring at my phone for like 30 minutes. I was like, I don't want to open it. I don't want to look. I don't know what's going to happen. But everyone has been so amazing, and it's like an extra awesome part of the process to feel like I'm getting closer with everyone who has watched me grow up on the show.
Yeah.
Like that's an intimate moment to share, even with however many people are watching. It's like it still feels like a very intimate moment to share that part of myself with people. So I feel closer to like everyone on the internet right now.
Positive
Amazing.
stuff. We could talk about it forever.
Yeah.
I might come up again later in the podcast. Let's go on to the questions from the fans. But thank you for being so open and sharing all of that with us. And I'm speaking for a lot of people here, and I'm sure through the whole cast. But like we could not be happier for you. And
Thank you.
We're just excited for you to just not have to think about this anymore and live your life. And that's a really great thing.
So
Yay,
nice.
Morgan's gay.
Woo, rainbow hearts everywhere.
Okay, so on Instagram, Rachel.bakes wants to know what is your favorite episode that you ever filmed for each of you. I guess it could be anything, both from
Not last moments.
Yeah. So I guess it could be something on the React channel. Or
Those
from
are
the
just
original
stuck in my
game.
little heart. I mean, besides the own stuff I help produce, which is the vlog, plug to the vlog. I think my favorite React episode was and I always say it, it's the Toe of Satan challenge. That thing was wild.
That's your favorite one?
It's my favorite just because like it's hilarious to watch. I love watching it because I start puking
it's
all
bad,
the
yeah.
saliva.
Oh,
Like I
God.
start eating ice cream with my hand because I felt like reaching for the spoon was gonna take too long. They cut it out, but I got some of it in my eye because it got on my finger and then I wiped my eyes
Wait,
and then
the
I
Toe of
started
Satan on
burning.
you? Oh,
yeah. So I
no.
got it around here, and so I don't know if they actually cut that part out, but I also took ice cream and put it on my eye because that was burning.
Well, that was looking inappropriate, so we had to get rid of
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
That's awkward. That's just weird.
So then after, I think I hung out in that studio for like 20 minutes, bent over the table trying to have a conversation with Katie. She's like, "Are you okay? Do you need?" I was like, "Shh, Katie, shh. Okay, and I told her, I was like, "Just tell me what you're doing this weekend. Let's talk it out. Just don't make any. Just tell me what you're doing this weekend. Let's just have a casual
Morgan, were
conversation."
you in that episode?
I got the email and I immediately replied no. They were like, "Are you interested?" And I was like, "No, I am not. I am not interested."
I remember
in that.
getting the email to that, and I started doing research. I was like, "Could I do this?"
What's
It was
the
just a hard
skull
no for
vote?
me. I'm like, okay, pretty
you-
much mild salsa is like too much. So
What's the craziest thing that you've ended up in?
Like something that you
Food-wise.
ate or had to deal with that was just horrible. but you
okay,
did it.
well, the
Were
fish
you in
semen was
Chirac?
interesting.
Yeah, you were in
Oh, yes.
Chiraco.
The worst episode that I've ever filmed was the Five Nights at Freddy's episode.
Ah.
I cried when they called me into the office. I was so scared. I was crying.
Right.
And then they said that you guys made a list about people who can't be called into scary shoots. And then later I just found out it's my name on a Post-it note. I'm like, okay.
Really?
That's what they said. I'm
You're
like,
not
you know
the
what
only
makes
one.
sense.
You're not the only
Makes
one. But
sense.
I'm not part of that process anymore. But I know
wow.
there were others on that list.
I remember. I totally forgot about that. There was a and
Petrified.
everybody being like, "Are you okay? Like,
I was
what did we
literally
do to her?"
so scared,
Right?
like-
Yeah.
People on the street were probably concerned for my well-being. Like, I look like I just got scared. Really,
So that's
really
not your
bad.
favorite episode.
No.
What was your favorite episode?
My favorite episode. Oh my god, I've been in like so many good ones that I love so much. I feel like one of the coolest episodes I've ever done is the very first episode of when we started playing through The Last of Us. Because that was just like the coolest
Yeah, you went through
moment.
such an experience
It was
playing that
so
game,
cool.
and you talked about it at the end for the most part. But like,
But it kind of changed that's another
Your perception
I'm
of-
segueing. I'm segueing.
I'll be quiet.
On Twitter, Zombfighter115
Gaming?
is, do you enjoy playing video games more now than you used to because of your experience on React?
I definitely feel like I have a greater appreciation for video games and just like really taking the time to play them through and like the environment affiliated with it. Because going through that, playing through that game here,
You could watch you go through it where you're like, whatever, like you kind of
and then
end
I got
up
like
doing
really invested,
really
like,
into
really
it.
because we'd be in the office for we'd be filming for so long, and it was just like you got to know the people, and then it was like a fun hangout time where I also play video games for a few hours, and so it was just like it definitely changed my opinion and my perception of them, and I've played a lot more video games since then, like all the way through, not like the lazy halfway play and then I get bored, like. Yeah.
Behind the scenes information is that like that's actually something that we talk about with developers of video games and the consoles, and for possible brand deals, where we talk about that, like, look, we understand that you might be able to go after somebody that plays video games that like has a hardcore gaming audience. That's all they have. We have a very broad audience. We have hardcore gamers that watch us, and they love to call everybody casuals and noobs and everything.
Me, I'm a noob. I'm still a noob.
But then you have people that, feel like they're you, and they get to actually identify with people that don't play video games a lot, and now all of a sudden want to play a video game for the first time, compared to you're never going to get that if you're working with a brand deal with somebody that only has hardcore gamers. And that's always one of our approaches with trying to get brand deals with video games.
Brandon, what about for you? Like, I assume that you've played a decent amount of games at some point, but would you say that you appreciate games more because you like have to play them so much?
I think for sure. Like right now, we just started playing Undertale, and that's a game that's been out for a while. And I like watching gameplay, but I'm not like a PC gamer, or I don't have like tons of consoles that I like just absolutely have to spend money on. So I kind of live vicariously by watching like online like stuff. So when, you know, you walk into the office and Derek's like, hey, guess what you're playing today? I'm like, no way. And so I get really excited because I don't play on my own time. I'm too busy. So like when we played PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, like I was so excited because I've seen the gameplay and I was like, yes, I finally got to play. I sucked, but it was a blast. Undertale now is like, I think the first game that I get to do that's a full playthrough.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting because I've watched the game and I've wanted to play for so long.
Another Last of Us 2 like footage thing came out today.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I retweeted that ASAP.
Yeah, I saw that you retweeted it. I was like, she's excited. And then you tweeted that you're like, oh,
I'm
yeah.
excited.
Well, do not play until you can play here once the game comes out.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay? Because
I thought that was established.
I'm just saying,
right?
once it comes
You're not
out, you
supposed
can't
to play.
play. 'Cause you can play it here. Don't play
The
until
fans
you play it
will
here.
kill you
Yeah.
and us
Yeah, you
if
know
you
what?
guys
That's
play
true.
or watch other people play before you actually get
That's true.
uploaded on the channel.
All right, Drishti on Snapchat wants to know, what are you going to be for Halloween?
Ooh, for Halloween day, I will probably whip out my Beanie Baby costume, which is just
What?
a
That's a
tiger
thing?
onesie, and I made like the tag. But last week for a party, I was Casey Becker from Scream, which is Drew Barrymore's character, which is the first person who gets killed in the movie. So that was super
Spoiler,
fun.
oh my
Yeah,
God.
Sorry. For those of you who haven't seen the 21-year-old movie yet, it's gonna get ruined.
Is that all that blood on your pants, or is that
Oh
from?
God, stop! I
Oh,
said
you noticed that?
Earlier before the podcast, you're like, don't talk about my pants.
No, don't bring it up. Yeah, I was splattering fake blood on some white kids, and they got on my jeans, and I have not taken the time to get stain remover.
You were just waiting for your moment.
I
to
was
bring it
waiting.
up.
I
was randomly
waiting. Yeah.
Are you
It's
going
like
to be
Benny's
dressing up,
Macarena
Brandon?
moment.
You know what? I am honestly too busy. I have class on Halloween, and I don't think I'll have the time to dress up. But my favorite, I think, thing that I've ever dressed up as was it's between Harry Potter and Peter Pan, man. I've been those things for like 8 years
man.
consecutively. Just so good.
It's an interesting thing because Rafi and I grew up Orthodox Jews, as most of the 5% knows. So Halloween is not something that you do when you're a religious Jew. But the fascinating thing just about religion in general is that a little known fact is that Orthodox Jews have a holiday where you dress up and get candy also.
Oh, really?
And it's in March.
It's our
every year, and
Halloween,
It's called
yeah.
Purim,
Yeah.
and it's not Halloween. It has to do
Right.
with this whole like fable and a story about how the Jews were saved at a certain point, and you dress up because that was part of how someone got saved, was by dressing up and hiding out. And it didn't start as candy; it started as like giving meals to people, but it evolved into candy probably because of Halloween. But how interesting that completely different things. They also have their same holiday as the same thing.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. But anyone that celebrates Purim out there, see you in March. See you in March. Morgan, Queen Azura 03 on YouTube wants to know, how many tattoos do you have now and which one is your favorite? You just keep adding. And I remember when you came so excited to show us your very first tattoo.
That's right. Because I had no tattoos when I started. I had
Yeah.
0 tattoos. I have 13 tattoos now.
Oh, you
Lucky
just got like
13.
2.
I did just
also.
get 2 brand new tattoos. My 2 new ones are I got a Squabbit from the show Brickleberry, if anyone watches that show. Pretty obscure. And then I also got this character called Bingo Bronson from a show called Broad City, which is like this little stuffed animal character kind of guy. He's really goofy and funny. And so those are my 2 most recent ones, but I have 13 right now.
So what is your favorite one?
My favorite one is probably my Little Mermaid one on my arm because that was the most painful one that I've ever gotten. So I'm like, it's my favorite forever and ever because it was the most painful, horrible one.
Are you done or are you going to keep getting more?
Oh, I'm going to keep getting more. I mean, I'll probably reassess once I have full sleeves, but I'm thinking it's going to keep going.
Brandon, tattoo?
I don't have any. I think I'm just scared of the commitment of them, which is probably why I won't do it. But I love to admire tattoos,
See,
so that's
there you
good.
go. It works out.
Benny and I do not have tattoos.
Correct. Don't think we will. But I also admire them and sometimes think that would be awesome, but I can never figure out what I would want. So even though it should be something Disneyland related, but you have that covered too.
Yeah, I do. I got the Disney thing down.
So I can't pronounce this on Instagram. Oh, now I see. I'm an idiot. Mymodelmedia. I can't do that. Mymodelmedia. What work do you do outside of the show? Do you have a job?
Oh, there we
so
go.
Brandon, if you don't know, which you probably do if you're in the 5%. So Brandon works here part-time as part of the engagement team. While is reacting still in all kinds of content, but you see him on the vlogs and in social media and things like that. So at least part of what you do outside of work is actually here.
Yeah.
But what else do you do? I mean, you're in school.
Yeah, so I'm still in school. I don't have any other job just because when like the audience engagement piece was like offered to me, I put everything down. I was like, yeah, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And so, yeah, I do the part-time thing here. I have a blast. I do school. It's a very busy schedule, but I love it so much because it's like it. You know, the old saying goes, when you love the thing you do, it's not a job. You know, it's you just go and have fun, and so that's what I do here. It's like it's so great that only a year ago I had started reacting, and in less than a year I was offered a position here to like help create content, which is so awesome.
And Morgan, what are you up to these days?
I am an assistant to my tattoo artist, not an apprentice. I'm not tattooing anybody.
wow.
Please don't ask me to tattoo you unless you're looking for a really terrible tattoo.
Can you tattoo me?
I mean, I honestly
God.
would.
Betty,
I would
if-
tattoo people.
yeah.
That's the bad part. I'll tattoo a little rainbow flag right on your face. Subtle.
So is that
though.
now an aspiration of yours to do that?
I don't really think I have the artistic ability to be a tattoo artist. I think if I did, I probably would. But right now, I'm just her assistant, so I do a lot of the stuff for her shop, like her pins and her shirts, and I help her out with that. But it's super fun, and I love my job, and I love going to work every day. So. And I get to work here. So it's like 2 really awesome jobs. And I get to say that I have 2 jobs, which is like so adult.
And see, I love that too, in the sense of there's always confusion around Brandon and the rest of the engagement team of like, do you work there? And we try to explain everyone actually
Yeah.
works here.
Yeah,
Right.
this is my job. This is a job that I
Yeah.
have and I do.
Yeah, exactly. It is. Yes, everyone is paid, and there's all of those things that are there. But it's
It's
like
one of
the
the number one
engagement team is like
questions.
an expansion of almost like here's another way reactors can work more at the
Right,
company.
right.
And trying to, that's evolving. And like we even recently had a whole conversation about how we're trying to figure out how that evolves for not just the people that are already doing it now, but also the possible future of it for other people too. We just don't know yet. I mean, the company is in a lot of ways, even though we talked about it at a company meeting as like, we just had our bar mitzvah, we turned 13. But like it's really early in the sense of what the industry is. Like we've been pioneering this thing for a very long time. And it's just starting in a lot of ways of figuring out how does this continue to work? How do we all continue to grow as
And the
reactor
evolution of
staff,
talent that
content,
end up
et
doing
cetera.
things that are more like working a little bit more full time, or staff that end up becoming on camera more frequently, and like how does that all work and evolve in a new industry that doesn't have rules is what we're trying to figure out.
in an odd way that like most of the people that like are on the show, that it's not just about how we're figuring out how people that are in the show or working here are getting more involved. The whole idea was like, we're going to have the fans become the people that get paid and are on the shows.
right.
And like that thought of like the future
That
of
was
entertainment
innovative for its time, too.
involve the audience as much as you can. And that's where I think it all started, of being like, how do we keep engaging in these ways? Well, one of these crazy ways that we decided to do it was like, let's just reach out to the fans to be on the shows. And then now it's just growing from there of how else do we engage? How else with the meet and greet, et cetera.
So if we want to feel old, you know, we did start over 13 years ago, and that still puts me at that time older than I think both of you still back then. That's how old I am now. Because you're
Oh, so you're
neither
like
of you
25.
neither of you are 23 yet, right? Exactly.
I'm 21. I'm close.
Exactly.
21.
So
Yeah,
there we
so,
go. So
yeah,
I was
for Benny.
23 when we put our first internet video online. I'm old. All right, so now some industry questions that came through. Again, you can use the hashtag FBE Podcast both in the YouTube comments or anywhere on social media is where we look for these questions. So we already talked about this. Lea Hohl wanted to know, would we ever do a convention or a fan event with reactors and staff in Europe? So that's a big jump, but this is the beginnings of all of those types of conversations. Is there demand for something when it's free? In the right positive way that could then lead to maybe people are wanting to do a bigger event and pay for it to then be in this ridiculous place that we could shoulder bring everybody out to Europe.
That's the biggest thing that is just interesting about this company and the way that our system or the way that it's grown works and why everybody's so invested in it is like this whole large group of people that now has included the staff in a lot of ways too, that it's just like, how do you make something as a city tour around the US, let alone countries, where it's not, no, we're not just one influencer going around and that's all they have to worry about. It's like 5 reactors going places, like, well, how many people are going to go to that? Like, versus, you know, that everybody's going to be like, I want all 150 to be around, and how are we going to fly
my
150
favorite's
people?
not here, and it's just like not possible.
Yeah, so I don't know yet what that'll ever become versus the idea of something like a VidCon or et cetera, where we have a day whole event or something that's at least where we're starting or thinking we might be going if this meet and greet that we're doing right now, this month. Is it already? No, next month.
Well, it's about, by the time this comes out, it'll be
Next
November.
month.
So
This month.
So it's in a couple weeks.
To then be like, maybe that becomes a thing that people can come and fly out for and come and know that we're always going to do it every year. And you can come from wherever you are to the big event that we do where we're all going to be there and we get to hang out and we do it once a year. I don't know how much else we could do or even around the country.
So here's a fun, interesting, creative one to talk about the reasoning behind things, but it's a little complicated, but in a very light way. So KarlsNotGreat wants to know, could you guys
You're
continue?
great, Karl.
Could you guys continue showing reactors who fail during challenges, like how when you do YouTubers or special guests, you have a point system rather than them being out if they fail one time? Yeah. It can be a bit of a bummer when someone's out so quickly.
Right.
So that's a good one. So a couple of
And
things.
do you
with
ever
that.
feel like, because they tend to have you watch the rest of it,
every
right?
laugh challenge.
Oh,
every
yeah.
laugh
Yeah.
challenge, I'm in it for like 1 second. One time I laughed at the black screen before the first video. So like, I'm like, hey guys, for 5 seconds, I'm in this
Right.
video. Nice to see you.
I would think it goes into like, it's just editing support, like these extra things that we would wish we would do, but there's only a limited amount of time that the
two
editor
things
could
of
do
reason.
these
One is
things.
bandwidth. There definitely is a bandwidth reality.
Makes the
to-
episode longer, makes it
and how
longer
much
to edit.
faster we can
yeah,
get that
right.
through, so we can have other shows get edited faster as well. So that's probably the primary reason. Even though when it first started, that was the format, and the whole concept is not can you get through how many times do you laugh. The whole idea is here is a compilation. You can't laugh through the whole thing. That is the game. That is the rule. It's been years of this format now. So at this point too, there's an element of like, no, that's the game. You know, you can't. And in a way, I'm sure there's people on the other side that would say cheap. Like, you know, like this is what I want.
If we ended up switching it,
real winners.
some people would be very pissed.
Yeah, so I think
on
you
the
can't
opposite
win at this
side.
point, and I think that it's the back and forth where, yep, we're going to end up making these different rules when we have celebrity guests and things like that in the content, but this is the game, guys. This is the rule.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of on the board of like, oh, well, don't laugh.
I get the,
can't help it,
yeah.
I'm
The only
sorry.
thing, maybe those are the kinds of things that if we end up figuring out, you know, off YouTube distribution, like, or community that we build that we sometimes think about.
Right, additional footage or something.
That maybe there'd
Yeah.
be something that like as a perk, like being on a website that we build or something, because if we keep mentioning all these things about how we can't afford to make this content the way that YouTube and even now Facebook works, Facebook's even less money than YouTube per view. So you're just like, how do you get past this problem that the traditional Hollywood doesn't have this issue? They get millions of views and they get so much money from advertisers, and then they're able to make big shows and
and
all this stuff, and
that's
we
what people
can't
just
do
don't
that.
understand, and that the true reality when you don't have funding from other people, or again in a totally different way, it's not like the money is still not equivocal to the views, and everyone should be making a lot more money really when you compare it to other forms of media. But when you are the one person, when you are just, I do my one vlog, or I play my one
put out
game,
one video a week
I
or
do
5
still
videos,
scale,
yeah.
and I still hire people, and I still have a business, and I'm an entrepreneur, but what I'm doing is very narrow. And so hence, even though the money is way too low for the views someone's getting, you can make a really good living if that's what you are. But when you are FBE, trying to grow and innovate and want to become like, we want to make content for all platforms forever, once you grow to the scale that we are, it becomes an even bigger issue of like, oh man, like we're just not making any more money right now. And we haven't figured out things like merch or live events, so we have no ancillary revenue coming in from those things. So everything we do becomes just that much more difficult to sustain.
Yeah.
But okay, so recent release feedback, Raf.
My God, we're there already?
Yeah.
Whoa, that went so quick. Okay, 2 things, I think. One, Emily Wants to Play 2 that came out the week before this would have come out. That was really cool. Like, we don't get the opportunities always, but of getting games early. And the developer of the game was like, has been in touch from us playing the games before. Also ended up playing on Celebs React as well, right?
Yeah, it was
I believe.
yeah.
So like it's been an ongoing good relationship over time, and we ended up reaching out and getting in contact and wanted to give us a game. You know, I'm not sure if we were the very first to be uploading it and
sure.
playing it, but it was like in the very first day, and we were able to get the game early. We're trying to do those types of things more often. Other people have those opportunities, and we haven't unlocked that as much. So that was a really cool thing to be done, and if you watch the episode, which was really cool that he was such a fan of what we all do here that like he actually made a book that was the science
the
of
actual
reaction.
game.
A little Easter egg, yeah.
By the Fine Bros, which is like so like what Derek wrote me like in the middle of playing. He's just like, I don't know if you know this, but this is so freaking cool.
Brandon, you were in that episode.
I was not in that episode, but I watched it and I loved it. It was so cool.
Well, whatever. I made a comment today at the company meeting that just like I have never seen an episode that we've done with as many F-bombs. It is a non-stop barrage of terrified. Like, I mean, Adam even like at
I played the first one. I know.
It's
I was
terrible.
there.
Yeah.
So you'll never do a horror game here again?
No, I'll do a horror.
I can take you off the post-it note.
Post-it.
I know it's funny for other people to watch me be scared. Like I love watching
yes.
other people be genuinely scared. Like that's funny.
So we should
Oh,
take
it's
you
one
off
of
the
the things I
post-it note and
enjoy
get
the
you back
most,
in
yeah.
these games.
I mean, we'll see. I'm gonna need like a nice blanket or something to like have in the room so I can feel comforted afterwards.
We start putting a blanket there for people if they need it.
Seriously, then you might need a little bit of a blanket, just to hold on to, shield your eyes. I seriously almost never even look at the screen. They're like, okay, you need to like look at what's happening. I'm like, no.
And I have one other. So also the 90s teens reacting to 90s high school.
It was a good one.
It was, yeah, great episode. Just like generally like just lots of interesting comments and a great watching sequence and like just of so many things that the teens are just being like, what?
Well, picking up on, like,
what? Yeah, they were picking up on things fast.
Well, the most fascinating thing in the video that we showed that person had made in 1990 was how would you know that this would be so relevant later? But the amount of people that were so against a camera and the concept of being filmed at school, being like, what are you doing? And how different that's become.
Right. It was kind of like, whoa, how weird. A camera is around. Like versus it's like, yeah, cameras are literally in everybody's hands at all times. So you always are ready for anything at any moment.
I'm never ready.
You're always like,
I am. I'm always like, you're going to have to do that over again. Whatever you're trying to do, it's not going to come out the way you want it to.
Yeah, I watched that episode. It was like, whoa, it actually is so odd that everyone in that was like, yo, get that camera out of my face. When now everyone has their phone out and is ready to Snapchat. And at any point, if everyone turns Snapchat on me, I got to do something for the camera. Yeah. And it's just like,
right. That's what they said in the episode, right? They were like, do it for the video, do it for the Vine.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It's one of the teams. Was it Tori? I don't know. Somebody said it. Yeah. But like, so my comment was about the commenters. Maybe some of the 5% were in there. That it's fascinating. We did make this title. The idea of saying like high school in 1990 versus high school in the 90s. And so many of the top comments were basically being like, it's not really the 90s. It's because it's more like the 80s, because if it's 1990, then everybody's still not actually 90s people. And it's just like, we get it. I totally understand.
The title is not going to work when you say teens react to a day in 1990. No one's going to click on that video.
A day of high school in 1990. So it's just an interesting thing of like, I appreciate like some of this. It's like, this is interesting, good feedback that it's not like negative. It's just kind of being like, and I don't think anybody was actually angry. It was just more of like wanting to, they're so passionate enough to be like, I grew up then. That was mostly where these comments were coming from, as our older audience being like, it's not really representing what, I was in the 90s. I wish that they could see the 90s. Which made me then go, what other types of things can we really show that represent various generations? Like we do a lot with like, do teens know 90s music and different things like that? And you've done a lot of like 80s music and such. And what other things like this, that this video is so cool, or when we did the yearbook.
Well, that hasn't come out yet. So we're trying to do more of this stuff. So we'd love suggestions both in this video and any of the episodes that do things like this. So coming out, it'll be this coming Wednesday when this comes out, is Teens React to a 100-year-old yearbook. That was actually our great-grandmother's yearbook, that when we were visiting our grandfather, they were cleaning things out and had found this perfect condition yearbook from 1917 with our great-grandmother in it.
So cool.
And when we
it was so perfect to be 100 years ago.
It's perfectly 100 years old. It's a good title.
Yes.
And we're in the spot where it's like, wow. And it came out phenomenal. Like, and the teens were pouring over this thing and realizing a lot of things, including like, wow, everybody in this yearbook talking about where they wanted to be, they've already lived their life and they're all gone.
Because John, in the episode.
John was in that episode, yeah.
But John in the 90s episode was like, oh, it's so weird to think about all these people are old.
Yep.
You watch the yearbook one, it's like, all of them are dead. Like,
Step past old.
So it's just like, but it's just so.
These are
it's so
fascinating
weird
things to
think
talk about different generations about in different ways. And once we found that, it became like, what else is 100 years old, or what other types of things? Because one of my favorite episodes that we've ever done is teens react to old cigarette commercials.
Yeah.
And that's the same type of thing. What is something that was so normal
go,
at one
"Whoa,
point
life
in
was
life?
like that. That's so different.
That's
How
exactly.
interesting to
And there's
speak
such
to. Yeah.
fun parallels to have and fascination. And I'm going to love looking back on that episode as the years keep rolling by with vaping. Because back when we did that episode,
Well, it's starting to come out, right?
know.
It just came out today saying that there was a whole study that says that the kids that are getting into vaping are now into cigarettes. Like they already are moving
interesting.
into
That
it.
wasn't what we talked about in that
Yeah.
episode, but it was coming up. A lot of the teens, when we did this a couple of years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago, they already started talking about vaping and admitting, oh, we vape. It's not the same thing. And then I remember, because I was still interviewing then, I think it made it into the episode, I'm like, you realize it's the exact same thing people were saying about cigarettes, and you were just talking about this a second ago, and history's going to repeat itself here.
Well, I was really happy seeing Leiden in the episode speaking to the idea of like, what we humbly here all are trying to do as best we can, which is like this very interesting thing that we're all a part of, which is like documenting. We're documenting thoughts and opinions and like what life was like. And so Leiden having the insight to be like, well, I guess people are going to look back at React and be like it's this 1990 video. They're going to be able to look back at these episodes and go, oh my God, what was her makeup like? Oh my God.
Like in the beginning of Teens React compared to now. Even just there is a great
hairstyles,
representation of
clothes,
things changing.
makeup styles,
and we talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
I always refer to it as time capsuling. Like we're time capsuling a lot of things. And even where people don't really understand what we are doing here, even if you're for some reason listening to this podcast when you don't like React and think it's a stupid
don't
reaction
think it does
thing,
this.
but if for some reason you are, really think about, wouldn't you just go crazy to be able to look at teenagers from the 1940s talking about the issues of that day? You'd be pouring
talking
over
about the viral song that's on everybody's listening to
everyone's
on the radio.
listening to this song, or seeing your parents or seeing your grandparents when they were younger talking about modern day issues. It's this history in a whole new way that we've been doing now for 7+ years. It blows my mind to think in 30 more years, 20, whatever. Imagine 30 years from now, and we're still doing the show, but going back 30 years to see what people were talking about. It's going to be living history, and you guys have been part of building living history.
That would put us on Elders React.
Yeah.
I'd be 51.
Not quite. You got to be 55. You guys are okay.
I
Okay,
would
okay,
not
okay, okay.
be on there
So
yet.
would we be on a really long hiatus, or would we still be on
It's
Adults
Adults React all the way.
Adults all the way.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All the way.
That's the thing too.
That's depressing.
That you'll be on this forever. But I talk about that a lot, even with some of the kids on Kids React. That'll be like, you will be an elder, and if I'm lucky enough to still be alive, which I could
Benny
very
talks
well
to them
be.
about death. Benny talks to the children about
I do.
death.
I make them realize.
Cool.
Not about death though, about how time is fluid and all of these things.
Benny gets really serious.
The amount of times I got a kid while filming, usually they get once they're 11 or older, I'll end up making them realize. You realize, like, your kids, if you ever have them, could watch you when you're 11 one day, and they'll be like, I never thought of it that way. I'm like, yep.
Makes them think.
But I got to make everybody think. But it is one of the things I'm most looking forward to, if I get to live long enough, is me being in my 80s, like some of the elders' age, and being able to talk to some of you guys who will now be in your 60s, and how we can still know each other and have a different type of conversation about our lives as elderly people, and kind of how special that's going to be.
Yeah.
Like,
It'll
look
be
what we did over
interesting. I
our
mean,
life.
even now, even just like the past 4 years, even being 17, now being 21, like that in and of itself is a crazy period of time to reflect back on. So like add another 30 years onto that, and yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll
Fascinating
be interesting
stuff.
for sure.
What kinds of things will be made with other companies and content where you see the Where Are They Nows or the cast of this now? And I'm sure that React's going to be one of those things when YouTube becomes nostalgia that people will talk about. Oh, right. Remember when Morgan was 17?
55 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Where is she now?
Morgan's on her 342nd tattoo.
Yeah, probably. I'm
Yeah,
just going to be
that'll
a
be
Here's a
wrinkled
clip
ball
of her when she was on number whatever.
when she was still cute and didn't have 50 cats.
Remember when you could actually see her face and it wasn't covered in tattoos?
The eyes.
Oh no. Don't do the eyes.
Eyeballs.
No.
I've seen videos.
I would never
Those are
get my
crazy.
eyeballs tattooed.
What's that
just
thing
to-
went viral even more so, right?
Right.
Oh God.
So we're
Terrifying.
kind of in the wrap-up area. So we have to find a hashtag. If you've not familiar, Morgan, I think Brandon knows, but we pick a hashtag so we see if people listen to the entire podcast or at least took the time to skip to the end. And then they leave that hashtag in the comments, which then gives them a chance to get a shout out on the next podcast. So it's usually related to something we talked about. So last week, it was Lucas Graham. And the reason for that was because we had 2 OG kids reactors, Dylan and Marley, who'd been on the show since they were so little. And then the idea of talking about 7 years old because the show was 7 years old. So we got a little obscure and said Lucas Graham. So
What about it, guys?
what do we
It's up to
think?
you.
What's a
What
good
are we
hashtag
thinking?
for this week?
What do you think? What are you thinking?
Something, I'm trying to think. What about like be yourself? Because we talked
Oh,
about
that's cute.
coming out and being who you are.
This is suddenly like the coolest, most realist hashtag I've ever had. So hashtag be yourself.
Hashtag be yourself, guys.
Man, people are going to be like, what an inspirational podcast that we
What
had
happened?
today. So use the hashtag be yourself in the comments, and we may shout you out next time around. Anything else anyone wants to talk about we didn't cover?
What do you bring it up?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of stuff.
That was a blast.
That was very productive.
fun. Wow, did the time really go by that quick?
I know. Like
Yeah.
they
We
were
said
at
that,
20
and I
minutes.
really was like,
I mean, am I
happened?
right? Aren't we at around an hour right now? Yeah, they're saying I think so. Yeah, okay, we're right around that
Probably
hour.
a little
Sweet,
over.
sweet.
I'm
Yeah.
here, so like an hour and 15, hour 30 minutes. I don't know. It's already tomorrow.
But this is always a thing of like, we're going to get into the shout-outs. Usually do this after the shout-outs, but we'll do it now. But like, I can't thank you guys enough in terms of being part of this and the evolution that it continues to be. It's definitely not like the same as it was. And being so embracing, even for you, Morgan, who have been on the show so long, like all these new people and realizing that change where it isn't as intimate when it comes to it only being me and Rafi every single time. And now it's still intimate.
Weird. It's so weird. This feels like an OG episode of Teens React for me because I'm just like, I've never been in a room with you guys alone since like, I don't know, 2016 at least.
Yeah.
It's probably been a year at
Oh,
least.
wow.
So this is like a cool experience for me. This is a little bit of a throwback.
Yeah. And for
Nice.
Brandon, it's always kind of been that way. But it's
Yeah.
still like, and as from talking to everybody, I know that like similar intimacies do build with various people that work
Yeah,
here
yeah.
over time because it's still the same
Oh, yeah.
vibe, but you're not like there with the same people every time. So it
Right.
creates a faster closeness when it is, oh, I see you about once a month. And that's the thing. Like, I'm sure it still happens depending on your relationship with a producer or a production assistant that's in the room. But man, shit got very real over the course of times with us in that room
Yeah.
with things that people were going through at various times, and I'm sure still happens. But it makes us very close very quickly. And,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's how I definitely feel. Like, you're definitely like a family member to me. And Brandon, especially now that you've been here at the office all this time, I feel the same way about you. And it's just like always just
My
just a
boys.
thing. Like, I don't know. The thing that we all get to do together, as much as it is in small periods of time and
Right,
not necessarily together, means
We're
a
all
lot, I think, for
collectively doing it,
yeah,
yeah.
and I think that we're all doing important work for the world, but obviously into our own universe, there's just a bond, and you guys take the time to be part of this thing, and that's not taken lightly
So
by us.
thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for letting us be part of this big ol'
And for
thing that
being
you guys put
ourselves,
together.
For being able to come here and be who we are.
Hashtag be yourself.
That's the general. If there was to be yourself, would actually be yourself and be opinionated would probably be the two things that is what our content stands for. Have an opinion, and it's not something to be screamed at for, even if you disagree. And we've talked about this all the time on this podcast. But man, in the world right now, it's so interesting to see this ethos that we've believed in is part of what has gotten us into this mess, is because people weren't actually listening to each other. And here we are trying to do that still. And man, I wish we can do it in multiple places so it's not just the voices of Los Angeles talking about this stuff. But I still think that all of you represent very well different things. But let's get out the shout outs. Again, these are people that used the hashtag last week of Lucas Graham. Use the hashtag be yourself for next week. So we go one
Pass
at a
it
time.
around.
Don't worry about the horrible pronunciation.
You can
because
literally just don't try. Just keep going.
Do your best.
That's my tip.
and it is okay. So big shout out to these members of the 5%, but we love you all. So shout out to Elisa Lockman,
Amy Acker.
Anna Shaddix.
Innocent anarchist.
Anton Svetin,
You 2 times.
Bernice Chu.
Bleacher 76.
Brian_T.
Candace Chu.
Trupcock. Yo, I always shout you out, man.
You skipped one.
Tana
Did I?
Manchali.
You just wanted to shout.
Sorry, I did. I like that guy. He's cool.
Damn it fails.
Daniel Pical.
Garrett Tanner.
Jade Kong.
Jalen Salon.
Jesse Van Dyke? I don't know. Try.
John Nice Guy.
Julie Jarapio.
Kendrick Harris.
Kevin R. Why am I always getting like the worst one?
Just go for it.
Just do it.
Colorado.
Kyle, I don't know.
Youngin Min.
Leah Hohl.
Luis Lopez.
Mama T.
Maureen O'Brien.
Maudiz.
Oh, Melissa West.
Mellow Cheesecake.
Mr. Benekatong.
Neto Gislati.
Peter Fontian.
Power Spy in 1 Games.
Queen Azura 03.
Rakanatha Latanto.
Richard Logan.
Salvador Lemus.
Simon James.
Steve Fisher.
Steve WF.
Unknown Thief.
Vincent Beza.
And if you hear a country named, at least one person in the 5% is actually listening from this country. Blows our mind. If we don't list where you're listening from, put in the comments, I'm listening from, put in your country, and you may get shouted out. So shout out to people listening from Australia,
Austria.
In Belgium.
Brazil.
Bulgaria,
China.
In Denmark.
Germany.
Guatemala,
Honduras.
Indonesia.
Italy.
New Zealand,
Pakistan.
The Philippines.
Switzerland.
Syria,
The UK.
And good old US.
Washington, California, New Jersey, New York, Utah, and Florida. Thank you so much for listening to the FBE Podcast. These come out, I think, on Thursdays, on iTunes and SoundCloud, on Fridays, on the FBE channel that might one day move to the FBE2 channel.
Yes.
Big plug, subscribe to FBE2. We're in soft launch over there, putting out vlogs 2 times a week. Brandon's working really hard on that with the rest
We're
of the team.
trying. We're up to like vlog 13 or 14 by now.
It's really a good time. I highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out, but I'm sure all of you have at this point because you're our biggest advocates. So spread the word in the other videos. If you see people that seem to be big fans, tell them to subscribe to FB2 and become part of this 5%. So thank you so much. Thank you to Morgan and Brandon for taking the time out to film late at night. And
Thank you, Benny.
Thank you.
You're
Oh,
the
Thank you,
real-
Benny. Great
you guys
host.
are the
Great
real
host. This is a
MVPs
great
over
job.
here.
You know, when John hosts this thing, he never thanks me. So
Hold on, I just want to say, I want to tell you guys how much I appreciate. You guys are always busy, but always make time for the podcast, which is so cool to see you guys just sit down, take a break, and talk to us. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate the extra time and the team behind the camera here
Yeah,
staying
guys.
late with us too.
Woo!
So good times had by all, I suppose. Right?
Yes.
Right.
Always.
All right. I don't want to end it. See, then when it
Oh,
ends,
I
it's
see.
back to reality.
You
I was
hang
like,
up
what's going on,
first.
Benny?
No,
It's
you
like,
hang up
yeah.
It's
first.
just back to reality. But okay. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Later.